Good morning, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us here today at Diamond Webinars. We've got a good show in store for you today. We're going to be looking at the state of retail during and after the pandemic and asking the question, can technology save retail? As we get started, some logistics. We have an ASL interpreter and closed captions. If for some reason the closed captions aren't automatically enabled, please go ahead and turn them on in your Zoom controls. We will keep our ASL interpreter spotlighted throughout the presentation. If for some reason you can't see it, you should be able to highlight that video from the panelists area. Also, you may notice we've disabled the chat during the presentation, but we've kept the Q&A enabled. Please use the Q&A at any time when you think of something. Our moderators will be reviewing the questions and passing them along to the panelists. For those of you in the audience who are new to our events, Diamond is a digital agency built by developers with a commitment to well-crafted, accessible, and inclusive software, always built on best practices. For nearly a decade, we've supported media companies, large brand names, and others who rely on us for product strategy, experience design, and full stack development services. We've become well known for building cloud-based media systems, video players, e-commerce, and more. Shifting to today's topic. As stores reopen and consumers return to shopping after months of purchasing online, the retail industry is faced with a series of challenges. From employee safety to dramatic shifts in consumer behavior, stores are looking at new technologies to restore confidence in both shoppers and employees. But retailers and developers don't want to waste their money on the wrong technology. So which technologies are the right ones to invest in? We'd like to present Chadwick Turner, who will be leading a panel of experts discussing how technology can save retail. Welcome, Chadwick.
The malls of the 1980s and 90s are a thing of the past, and the malls of today are dealing with a global pandemic. They're empty, but consumers are starting to return to stores, and the question remains, can tech help save brick and mortar? Whether it's AR experiences, robots, artificial intelligence that helps consumers make recommendations, and of course, contactless payments. So let's discuss. Welcome to our panelists. We're quite excited about today's group of experts that have decided to join us. If you want all of our panelists to turn off your microphones or turn on your microphones and you turn on your cameras, we'll start the panel. Joining us first today, Amy Hedrick. I've had the pleasure of knowing her technology for quite some time in the VR space, but it's really some groundbreaking products that will enable physical products and spaces to be clean. Amy's CEO and co-founder of Cleanbox Technology. She is a thought leader on providing solutions and innovations in clean tech. She was formerly part of the think tank division of Li & Fung, a leading global consumer goods sourcing and manufacturing company based in Hong Kong. So welcome, Amy.
Thanks very much, Chadwick.
Silke Meixner, very excited to have her here. She is a partner at IBM. She has extensive experience with international digital marketing, sales, brand strategy in, fortunately for us, the areas of retail, media, and consumer goods and services. She has helped CEOs and CMOs define and operationalize their transformation agendas. And this, in turn, empowers those teams to better address market shifts, so where we're currently at in this world, and capture new revenue opportunities. So Silke, we're happy to have you today.
Thank you, very happy to be here.
And last but not least, William Kightley. Thank you for joining us out in the real world today. William is VP of Visual Merchandising at Fendi Americas. He has over 15 years of fashion retail experience, including time at Harvey Nichols, Jack Wills, and All Saints. Prior to joining Fendi, William was director of visual merchandising at Burberry for the Americas, overseeing over 70 freestanding stores, 400 points of sales from Canada to Brazil. So you can imagine the amount of information he has with how to make a great experience in the world and the amount of strategizing he's had to do in the past 3 to 6 months on, well, how do we make these spaces safe while also accommodating the shift to e-commerce. So William, we're very excited to have you today.
Thank you, Chadwick. Hi, everyone.
Cool. All right, and I'm your moderator, Chadwick Turner. I've worked at Creative Artist Agency, Cognizant Consulting, 21st Century Fox, and Amazon. For the past 6 years, I've really focused on virtual and augmented reality and startups with the primary mission of creating really cool experiences, which is why I'm very excited to be at Diamond, while at the same time trying to take those experiences and actually turn a profit. So with that in mind, let's start the discussion. And a question that is really top of mind for me, and I'll go to Silke first. For your clients, especially those clients with brick and mortar stores, has the pandemic forced them to speed up or shift their innovation strategy? Something that potentially was going to be 18 to 24 months now needs to fit in a matter of weeks? And if so, understanding that all of you somewhat have to anonymize data, is there any examples or stories that you can share?
Yes, Chadwick, a big yes. Every client, and it doesn't matter the industry that they're in, they had to look at their digital roadmap or their digital transformation agenda. And has it changed? Oh yes, an acceleration is taking place across the board. The decisions that often are technology decisions that have to be backed by the entire board and organization have to be accelerated. So the roadmap itself has shifted, but also how important minimum viable products become and how quickly you put something into the market that is maybe not fully baked yet, but that you can iterate on. So 2 examples come to mind briefly, perhaps, just sharing them for general inspiration. Clients have for a long time thought about the need and the desire to virtualize their customer service aspect. So think about the call centers, for example, or omni-channel interaction with customers and clients. That has been along the way for decades. Technology is accelerating, but through the pandemic, those tough choices on how to virtualize, for example, an entire call center where the agents had to be physically in the office location in order to serve the customers had to be accelerated quite dramatically because of the pandemic. And the client themselves has really been very good at making decisions faster, being comfortable with a level of an element of still uncertainty that not every use case was solved for, but to iterate quickly. So kudos for our clients to be ready. And then of course for us, IBM, to help in that regard. The other part that I've seen, so in the B2C environment, retail locations are closing. You have to make these decisions quickly for the temporary closure or the shift that is occurring that's at a larger scale. In the B2B environment, one of the biggest indicators of need to accelerate was to make sure that a lot of plans that have to do with retail and supply chain and food safety have been experiencing a tremendous shift. So here we have a lot of clients who use blockchain technologies and it was a nice to have or would like to have agenda item for most of the executives. Now it has become a critical element to ensure success. So we can talk about that later, but those are really the shifts, and the pandemic is an absolute accelerator for these roadmaps.
I think that was an interesting story. As we had prepped and you had shared some information on that was definitely something that I was not surprised to hear it, but when they're companies with tens of thousands of people and they do have to make decisions as if they were a startup, it's a dynamic, agile environment. Almost every team has to become agile. With that said, Amy, as a startup, one thing I would love you to start with is potentially describe what your technology does and whether or not, as you, I've known your product in the virtual reality space, but what you've effectively solved is the ability to clean pretty much any device or surface. And if you've actually experienced, as you're talking to larger organizations, that they're willing to move faster now because of the need to effectively get people back into stores.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. I think it's willingness is it's the natural response. They have to in order to survive. I mean, sometimes a pandemic like this will force companies and people as well, of course, individuals, to just make choices that they would maybe have been more cautious about before, maybe have followed a longer, well thought out path. But being innovative means that you need to kind of skip ahead. What my company does is address hygiene. And we started in the VR AR space because headsets are shared by many, many people. There are multiple levels, layers, surfaces, materials, etc. And because they're closer to contagion transfer points, like your eyes, nose, and mouth, it's really critical to make sure that you're minimizing your risk. Basically, you're making sure that someone who's sick doesn't transfer that sickness to the next person. And of course, we started out way pre-COVID, and it's unfortunate that it takes a pandemic for people to really, or maybe organizations to take some of these extra steps that probably could have been taken previously. As a startup or as a young company, we have already been that's kind of how, startups work. And we're also primarily remote company. We have our base, of course, but we a lot of people that work with us are living, all over the United States, some in Canada, some in the UK. So it was a little bit less of a stressor point for us to be having to work from home because everybody was really self-motivating already. But that being said, it just continued I think for innovation, an organization has to be willing to look at a division that will allow it to become agile. And to your point, Chadwick and Silke as well.
That's very interesting. And you actually hit on a topic, which is innovation. And William, the next one's going to go to you on innovation, because no doubt throughout your career, you've leaned towards innovation on the visual merchandising and how we can create an experience that potentially had not been seen before. So are you recognizing that skill set of innovation and being agile with how do we make something great is serving your team and your company well, with now the vision of merchandising potentially is heavily on e-commerce for the time being, and how do we leverage the artistry of visual merchandising to draw folks back into physical retail? And if that's not a good assessment, I would love for you to clarify and almost just give us your broad stroke of how you're approaching innovation in the world of COVID.
Absolutely. I mean, for us, and I think all of fashion retail, seeing the close down really brought the full attention onto online and how successful brands were with their online, how interactive they were, the information that they needed. I mean, for my world, which is luxury retail, a lot of it is about that personal connection. It's having that one-on-one conversation. So I think it does pull that to the forefront of how do you still give that romancing of the product in an online environment. I think the interesting thing is, as we're starting to reopen, we're learning every single week, every day as things change. I was saying to you guys this week how different the customers are since we've reopened. It's much younger, much more male focused, and there doesn't seem to be so much of a concern about safety, I would say. But we're not seeing those kind of older clientele or the clientele that have the larger money. So how do we find a way to keep engaging with them? So I think for a lot of luxury fashion businesses, it's how do we create these virtual experiences that create that safety, but still create a moment of intimacy. And that has been the big challenge. So again, I would say we're learning every day, seeing what people are responding to. The other part as well, I think, is with online, is seeing how successful the supply chain was in handling all of those requests. We deal with obviously expensive items, but with limited availability, and they may be in different parts, different stores, different locations to where the client is. So how do we find that information? How do we transport it quickly and easily? And then handling returns as well. So there's so many facets to this.
We became spoiled with good logistics.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think William, what you were hitting on with regards to in your business, the shift in which consumers are coming in store, which ones are still online. I'd be curious, Silke, with regards to patterns in consumer behavior that you're seeing on a macro side of things. no doubt a lot of the transitions in the past 3-6 months have been associated with the pandemic. Do you think they're representative of a permanent shift, or are you seeing this more as a once we solve for X, Y, and Z on the pandemic front, it'll go back to business as usual?
Great question, Chadwick. It's both. So I think the immediate need for safety and providing the transparency around whether it's the sourcing, where maybe the goods have been handled, and ultimately bringing them to the end consumer, whether that's, through online, but also then through the, retail outlets that are open again. That has been and will be, I think, at the forefront of our consumers for the next foreseeable future, and hopefully will wane off a little bit once there, have been successes in vaccination or medical treatment of the pandemic. That's clearly at the forefront. However, we have also seen how much of a shift there is with a different kind of consumer who clearly cares about the origin of their goods. So that transparency that helps us in the acute case of the pandemic also is really important to consumers who discern whether they know where goods came from, that care about the environment, that might even have the expectation that, the product that they are consuming is recyclable, etc. So what we are being asked to help is our clients to become better and well-versed in being able to tell that story to the end consumer. And the enabler for that is data and insights, and also the ability to analyze those patterns. Are they temporary shifts in consumption patterns? Are they more long-term? And for our marketers, product planners, logistic planners, to use that data to make really good decisions on their functions, including in some cases spur of the moment data. So if it's, for example, marketing your product and service and knowing that the weather pattern in a geography, is about to change, you can do much better marketing and much better insights-driven marketing that has a call to action that prompts a lot more response than just a general campaign. So little proof of concepts or proof of value are popping up all over the place. And I would say they are 80% right now pandemic related, immediate shifts in consumption pattern, but 20%, and I'll expect that to become a much larger percentage, is the long-term pattern recognition, predictive analytics, cognitive analytics that help to really predict and forecast in a much more precise fashion than we do right now.
I think you hit a nail on the head that I love to emphasize. Any client looking to make a decision, especially a very expensive decision, let's make a data-driven decision. Speaking of data, Amy, I would be remiss if we didn't highlight one of the recent wins with regards to your product, because as Silke mentioned, one of the biggest things for consumers, myself included, is not, where it comes from or like, how clean is this? I feel like I have to take the task onto myself to be like, okay, how much Clorox wipes do I have? I just got my groceries. How long do I leave it at the front stoop? Like all these questions that we had at the beginning. So similar to researching what food I eat, do I go with cage-free organic? The products that I receive, do you foresee a world where there is a Cleanbox seal of approval that this has been effectively, disinfected from COVID or other pieces? Because that's one question. The first one that you might want to start with is also that recent success with regards to COVID and how that has kind of ballooned into potentially PPE at hospitals, and where I could see this specifically to William and any of Silke's clients is if employees have to wear masks in retail environments, you don't have to spend hundreds of thousands on everybody gets a new mask every day. Potentially they can clean the mask on a daily basis. So broad topic, but I would love you to dive a little deeper, Amy, with regards to recent data victories for what you've built.
Sure. Thanks, Chadwick. So, and just to clarify, we use UVC and an LED. Our engineering is very specifically around maximum efficacy use of UVC light. We do it in an LED because it removes the components of mercury, ozone, and heat that are traditional with other kinds of bulbs or lamps of UVC light. And we do that because, of course, we start with sensitive and expensive electronics. But we also need to clean multiple types of surfaces. And when we first, I guess mid-March, when a pandemic was kind of shutting everything down and grounding all of us wherever we might have been at that particular time, we had some of our clients saying, well, we know UVC light's highly effective. Has it been validated against COVID? And that was its own project, because as you can imagine, SARS-CoV-2, which is COVID-19, is a biohazard level 3 and up, as opposed to SARS-CoV like MERS or other level 2 labs where you can take and actually validate the efficacy of a product or a technology. So we were able to say, so our clients were saying, well, listen, we know there's a shortage in these hospitals. We want to be able to donate our CX1 units, which were built for HMDs, worn on your face or head. And so we started there, and we in 10 days had a retrofit so that you could decontaminate masks in hospitals. So, when people were using them, they weren't using the same mask for 17 days and keeping it, in a paper bag at the end of their shift kind of thing. And so we were able to show that in under 1 minute, we can kill SARS-CoV-2 on a hard surface, and under 2 minutes, we can kill it on an N95 mask. So that's been validated in a biohazard level 3 lab. We've done backup validation with other types of viruses, including H1N1, 2290, and OC43. So we're very, very excited about that. And to your point, Chadwick, I mean, the PPE, there are some places that are not, they're not having a shortage right now. But this is, obviously, as people, it's far beyond first responders. It's not just hospitals or, fire departments or police departments. As you mentioned, when you go back to even a retail store now, if you are in a place where they are reopened, every employee has to wear a mask. If you walk in as a consumer, you have to wear a mask. And I started traveling again a little bit, traveling between New York and Los Angeles. At the airport, you have to wear a mask. And I see people with these masks, and sometimes they're fabric of some kind, or occasionally they'll have some sort of surgical mask, but then they don't clean them. And then they're still continuing to wear them day after day. So we do have a product that decontaminates masks, and you can do it in under 2 minutes. So that's one example of the product. And I would just mention that, when it comes back to being safe in a retail environment, in bricks and mortar of any kind, to be honest, there are two components. And one is actually being safe and knowing that you've provided the safest experience. And then the second part, I think, is letting the consumer feel that confidence with you. So showing them that you've gone above and beyond, that you have actually tested and validated whatever you're using to make them feel safe, that you're making that visible. Kind of to Silke's comment on transparency, that's really critically important.
That's very, very exciting about the successes, and I'm looking forward to seeing those when I walk into airports or malls, where I can just kind of slide that. I put my change in my wallet in this one, I clean my mask in this one, and I move on with my day. This next question is kind of a question for the entire group, and something I want to say to all of our attendees. We actually have multiple platforms where we're monitoring the questions. If you have any questions for the folks on the line, let us know. Please just add it to the chat, and then we will make sure that probably in the next 15 to 20 minutes, we'll take a pause, final thoughts, and then we'll answer as many questions as we can. So you've got some experts on the line. If you want to ask a question, feel free, and we'll try to answer as many as we can. The question for everybody, it's a broad question, and William, I'm going to put you on the hot seat first. So the other two get more time, but what is the biggest challenge so far for yourself? This is a topic during COVID-19, this is a topic of how can technology save retail? And the first instinct is like brick and mortar retail. We think of the consumer, but for you as someone that's actually inside of a business, a luxury brand, is there also effects that have occurred with regards to the ability to walk to somebody's desk and actually talk through designs or potentially next steps? What are the challenges you faced not only on the consumer side, but are there also challenges you faced as a company, and what are some solutions that you've arrived at?
Yeah, absolutely. I was part of the process of reopening this office, trying to make it a safe environment to people to come in. Again, I'll be completely honest, it was a lot of scrabbling, thinking on our feet to try and make that work. First and foremost, the safety of our employees is number one, especially in the brick and mortar stores. We have to make sure they feel comfortable to return to work. And that's why I love hearing about your product, Amy. I think it's incredible. Well done. I think it has so many applications, especially for our world. Some of the challenges that we were talking about was, if a client wants to try on product, what do we do with that product? We have product that can't be steamed with hot water. There's furs, there's exotic leathers, those kind of things. So what is the solution? So maybe we will be having a conversation after this. But definitely it's been, and again, I was saying earlier, we are learning as each day goes on. We're finding, I'm seeing around 50% of people that aren't that concerned. They'll touch everything, they'll try things on, but there's the other 50% that are staying away. And so for us, again, I think it was really about making omni-channel much more full picture to be able to service the clients out there. I think we're still working on it. There's applications like Hero, which connects you to a sales associate live, and you can do videos in a store, you can speak there and then. And I think things like that are going to really help us move forward, and other brands similar to us.
That's very exciting to hear. First and foremost, I think spot on with regards to the first phase of this is the importance of the employees, to hear people that are in senior positions, to make sure that is the first thing. The best thing we can do is say it and live true to that, but also inspire others to make that decision. Silke, no doubt you have a lot of experience with this as well, with regards to what are the biggest challenges you have faced. No doubt it's verticalized potentially across clients. Some are consistent, and no doubt with an organization as large as yours, there is also an expectation that with IBM being a legacy company in technology, it's been generations have known of IBM, from going to the moon to now solving problems. What are the problems you guys are effectively dealing with right now, and how are you solving them?
Yeah, I'll give you an example. I mean, the cases definitely, as I mentioned earlier, Chadwick, they span utilizing technologies to accelerate what is already disrupted in the industries, whether that is, in manufacturing, automotive, but specifically for retail. A lot of the work that has already been started in virtualizing the experience is now moving faster. What I mentioned earlier, that use cases have to prove value very quickly, and that even incremental change makes a difference. Those have been the mantra. So a very agile environment, as we were talking about earlier. I also thought both Amy and William, you brought up other elements that sparked my thinking. So my own personal experience has been, we are consultants and we deliver services to our clients. And lucky for us that, oftentimes we would do that virtually, but very often we found ourselves on a plane. So Amy, we'll talk later about the use case there. I see a lot of application possibilities, but no travel right now for many of the teams. And so the employee safety first and client safety first is a mantra that IBM had from the beginning. And it resonates also on a human level. I mean, we talk about technology, we talk about innovation, we talk about bleeding edge. At the end of the day, we are also humans in this together, right? And so the idea that we virtualized all our delivery through video chats, through lots and lots of tools that make collaboration and interaction more fun, more online, whether it's whiteboarding in a virtual environment or co-creating and ideating around shared documents. It has been a steep learning curve for our clients as well as us. What works? I mean, we came up, I remember very much in March, with this bucket load full of ideas, how to ideate and do the whiteboarding sessions that normally are, 3 days of, very well facilitated innovation. And some of our clients said, whoa, calm down. We need something very simple. We just have to master video and chat first, and then we'll go from there. So going at the pace with each other has been helpful. So the technology is an enabler, but we also are trying to make that connection real. And also that, you know, we have, I think, an awareness that there is a lot more going on in people's lives than what we get to see in a little video session. So having a bit of empathy, putting, again, the human experience at a center has been what we've been working with. And it helps to just take it one day at a time as well. So using the technology to help us be more connected, more frequently connected, but also adjusting it to where the pace feels comfortable.
That I think aligns with a lot of folks, where people that generationally maybe didn't have to know how to work Zoom, they have now received Zoom, Microsoft Teams, Google Meet, and it just, you need to learn which one has your virtual background, which one is going to show your hamper. Be prepared for either.
Right.
Personal story on that one. With regards to Amy, I'm actually curious on that front, because no doubt the selling of your product, the value add of it actually has been, making assumptions, but it's been an easier sell during this moment to be like, yeah, we solved this and this is how it works. Because originally I was looking at your product for a virtual reality arcade. Not that many of those out there. So it is a market that was smaller, and now it's like, oh, I clean anything within minutes. Let's talk. The responses from William and Silke kind of prove that point. On your front, though, with regards to the complexities of technology, and let's say your product can assist in retail, what are some issues you've faced over the past 3 months, and maybe what are some solutions to solve those in the event that someone's listening and they have similar problems and they're trying to figure out how to solve it as well?
Well, I guess I would answer that in two ways. I think the first for us as a company is really educating people on what what our product does and how it does it and what are the differences. I think 2 years ago when I was on speaker circuits, I would talk about why it was so important to have some process in place. I don't have to talk about that anymore, and now just helping people understand what. I don't want to say what you should be afraid of versus what you shouldn't, but helping, the more you're educated and the more informed a customer is, regardless of what type of customer they are, the more confident they'll be in whatever the process is. And so for me on the business side, I think it's educating people specifically about UVC light versus UVA versus UVB. How do you use it? When is it effective? What can it, when is it safe? Is it ever not safe? And those have been my biggest challenges in the last few months, number one. And then number two, just, help, there's a shift of pace in terms of adoption, right? So both William and Silke have mentioned how there's a change. You guys, you're with big companies, well established for a very long time, and large ships are hard to shift around, aren't they? But being able to think about how to help consumers respond to that. As a company that is already very agile by nature, it's easier for us to understand how to be agile. So trying to help our customers, because we're not just entertainment centers. Even in the XR space, the VR and AR space, we have clients across the board, from government to healthcare to enterprise, very large global companies. And so just being able to take that information and think about it in a broader perspective. I know I'm not answering it directly. I'm more broad strokes right now. But I think that, those have been both the challenges, and I suppose opportunity. I know this isn't quite your question, but I was thinking about this earlier when you're talking about innovation and shifting and having to make quick decisions. Nobody ever really likes change. Corporations especially don't like change. And if something is working, you really don't change it until it's not working any longer. And I think what it's doing, though, is, when you have a global pandemic such as this that we're in now, we all get the opportunity, if you will, to say, okay, now we can actually take all of these amazing technological advances and we can think about those applications in a new and exciting way. And I see great opportunity in retail with that.
Yeah, that's really well said. A question I have, I guess, to the whole group is, we've had a couple questions coming in that I don't even want to wait until the end. I think that they're relevant to little pieces that people have recently said on the panel. Broad strokes, how is retail and technology currently working together for consumers to visit stores again? That is an example that you really lean into and go like, we just need more of that. For example, how I'm interpreting this question, big data is enabling contract tracing systems, or retailers are able to potentially put a Cleanbox style device and enable folks to have their personal PPE be cleaned on site within 2 minutes, similar to going to the vending machine and taking your time to pick between Mountain Dew or a water. Like, with these technologies, what are the ones that you're currently looking at or are aware of that make you look at how retail and technology are effectively going to work together to save the in-person experience? Because I think what William highlighted, and I'm a VR advocate. If you look at my LinkedIn, it's all over like, let's go virtual, but there is something that is going to take years, if not decades, to replicate, which is the in-person communication, the eye contact that, yes, avatars are getting better at that, but the flow of apparel is one of the hardest things to get right in a virtual environment, how it truly fits on one's person. So I guess the question, broad strokes, retail and technology, are there certain examples that get you excited and things that you think we need to lean into more so than just let them be one feature of a product?
Yeah, I mean, I can start. I mean, I think through this, as we've been exploring what competitors are doing, I've seen a couple of great examples of virtual flagships. So especially in my world, when we have stores in different locations, 90% of them aren't the flagship. They have limited product compared to the flagship. And they always tell me, oh, I wish I had this product. I wish I had that. And with these virtual flagships, it doesn't really matter then. You can work with your customer wherever you are. You can visit this site together. You can shop this space. So you can still have that experience of walking through the store, walking up the stairs, discovering different areas and still building that excitement. And I think, again, it's just a great way to give that customer experience. Even if they're sat at home, you can send them a link. You can be with them on that walkthrough if you want to help that selling experience. And I think the fact that most people now feel freer to move away from a big city location and live in a nice countryside area, not having to commute into a city, this does bring a lot of opportunity, I think.
Yeah, I'd love to build on that, William. That is very true. And yes, virtualization, all the rage, and so much more to be enabled, to make it be more tactile, to make it again feel like a tangible experience. The other point that I was talking about earlier, an underpinning is also that data and analytics capabilities, right? I mean, if I am able, as you know, a company that provides a product or a service, if I'm able to better predict what might be the surge in demand for a specific item, or since William, you and your friends are moving to the countryside, you know, maybe store locations that haven't carried a certain product before now would benefit from that. What are new retail models? So the underpinning of big data and analytics, both in the big sense, you know, more connected data and insights opportunities are at the forefront of our thinking and our clients' thinking. And then more in the moment opportunities, right? So if I am more relevant because I have data about your preferences as a consumer, about your likes in the past and what you might actually enjoy that you don't know even now, if I preempt that shopping experience through outreach and communication beforehand based on good data and insights, you have a happier consumer who finds the information is relevant to them, more willing to engage, becomes part of a positive brand engagement, and then all the way through to that data on at the point of sale, if it's, you know, in a non-virtual environment, that the right product is there at the right time. So the analytics capabilities and the connectivity between the disparate data sources and maybe even artificial intelligence and cognitive overlays are the topics that we look at all the time, get us excited and gets our clients engaged as well. I see a lot of potential in that regard.
While we're on this topic, so for those of you that are attendees, I know I mentioned earlier we were going to wait for the end for Q&A, but we've had some Q&A that actually is relevant throughout this discussion. So we're just going to sprinkle it in and end the conversation about 15 minutes with final thoughts. With regards to what you said regarding artificial intelligence and big data to define like what the user potentially wants. The question goes back to an earlier discussion with regards to supply chain. And if we actually think there's going to be a major change in the upstream supply chain to be more local because of potential limitations that occurred at the start of this. I think the golden standards is products disappearing from shelves, whether that was just a computer psychological rush, but the questions immediately popped up of, should we be making things more local? And if the answer is yes, do you see that change happening fast, slow, or kind of the normal pace?
Yeah, it's a good question. The localization and also consumers wanting more locally sourced is clearly a preference that has been around long before pandemic. The shortages in certain goods and supply chain, toilet paper to name one of them, hand sanitizer, has clearly shown us where the vulnerabilities are in the supply chain. And it goes well beyond what is local versus comes from further afar, but also the sourcing of the materials already, right? So our big belief is that blockchain technology, I mentioned it earlier, can be such a conduit to help for the full transparency of that supply chain, from sourcing the material all the way to where ultimately the goods are logistically being transported, and it can be local as well beyond. We believe that the data and the availability of having that ledger-based and blockchain approach is instrumental in the safety of the supply chain and the availability of product, and then to innovate on top of that. So it's not only local, although that is certainly a trend, but it goes well beyond that and really looks at it as an end-to-end opportunity to solve for.
Yeah, William, I'd be curious your thoughts on this with regards to, no doubt, as new products develop or new styles come into play, the opportunity on the visual merchandising side is lean into special features of that product. With regards to local and supply chain, are you noticing that these conversations potentially, no doubt, have always been a part of the conversation, but are more so now due to the current situation? Or what are your thoughts on the topic?
The supply chain is a difficult thing for us because one of our selling points is that it's Italian and everything is made in Italy and has to come from there. So it's very difficult for us to be local. I think the big question is how quickly and seamlessly we can get the item into the customer's hands. We're finding that the patience level is shortening. Obviously, people walk into a location, they see something, they want to buy it there and then. And that instant gratification is the challenge in my industry. I mean, you look at some players out there, they can offer that 24-hour shipping directly to your home. I think that's just going to get bigger and bigger and more important, just because I don't think instant gratification is just going to keep growing. I don't think there is much patience to wait 1 week, 2 weeks, even longer for the item that you're expecting.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. As someone I was on the business development side of Amazon, mostly digital, but one of the ethos of that company, you just look at the flywheel, which is online. It's increase customer selection, reduce prices, and it's just this flywheel of sorts, right? So as consumers get trained on that, a question to the group, we've talked a lot about safety. If we can accommodate safety, that maybe that adds one leg to the stool of people returning to retail. But the other piece is, as people sat on their couch, ordered their goods, potentially as retailers, as brick and mortar locations, as malls become campuses with events, how hard will retailers have to try to also be more of an event, an experience of sorts? And this is a question, no doubt, to the entire group. And I'd be curious, William, no doubt you have some insights with regards to how Fendi is approaching this or how you're thinking about this. Silke, no doubt your clients, sometimes we all have to wear multiple hats as consultants. The scope is this, and then they go, yeah, but how would you implement? And no doubt Amy, when your technology is deployed, they're asking, hey, so now that we have it, how would you recommend we tell people about this? Is this so special that we should do PR around it? So I guess broad question to everybody on that front. William, if you'd like to go first.
Yeah, I mean, so looking at 2019, every conversation we had was about driving foot traffic. How do we get people to return to brick and mortar stores? It was about creating experiential retail, creating an exciting environment, pop-ups, pop-ins, special collaborations to drive foot traffic. And now that conversation isn't on the table. So it's a massive pivot. I don't know if I have the answer yet, and I'm absolutely open to suggestions and feedback. Like I said, I think it's how are we engaging our clients on a virtual level and still giving them these special moments that they feel engaged. So definitely,
the good news for you, William, is that it sounds like you probably have a lot of good ideas once the world turns back to normal.
Yes, I have a whole folder of ideas that we can action when we feel more comfortable. We'll get there.
Very good, very good. Silke, Amy, any thoughts?
Yeah, and feeding off what William started to allude to, so much more of an experience and an engaging experience is what our consumers and customers want. It's no longer the differentiator, but it becomes a table stake, and people expect that. And Chadwick, in your prior life and the standards that you said, there's so many clients of ours who say we want an Amazon-like experience because that is the expectation that consumers have. And so even before pandemic, a lot of the design work, the technology innovation design work, had to put the consumer at the core. And while that is a non-shocking truth, it is how do you have the right level of technology support across an omni-channel experience that you really hit those moments that matter. And they're not all created equal. There are some that, of course, I want a good search experience. I want to be able to do this on any device. And when I walk into the store or when I actually decide to purchase, you better know me. That's kind of an expectation. So that's table stakes as well. But how do you then become helpful and supportive of the consumer's experience is at the core of all our technology enablement. So we are able to develop a lot as for our clients, ourselves, on what is technically feasible, but where does it really make a difference? Where do I maybe help you as the consumer not have to punch in your sizing information again, or your color preference, or your dietary restrictions, but I can transport that into another environment. So it's little but very meaningful moments like that. We call them moments of truth that matter in that shopping experience. And we have now made it a habit to always think of it as an experience journey and not only one moment in time, because what you read in content maybe next week is in the back of your mind as you go online and browse and research, is something that you might then also want to have as a brand experience in the store. So thinking about it as a consumer and empathy-led journey with very specific moments of truth that matter and oftentimes are also very brand related is it has been key, and it has been very, very enjoyable to make that even more important through the pandemic, but well beyond as well. I think that's a trend that you design and innovate as an end-to-end perspective that's from the consumer vantage point is what I place my bet on.
Well, I think, Chadwick, to your original question, I think that immersive experience has been the goal for a long time. from retail to many, many other industries. And in fact, if you go back to talking about VR and AR, which is how you and I originally had connected, that is, of course, the goal of those immersive technologies. How can we better engage? And this really, though, speaks to both the point that everyone's brought up this morning, is that personalization, because some of these things that these immersive technologies do is help that personalization process. You talk about data points and moments of truth, and William, you're talking about very specific catering to specific demographics, and how and when you make those choices. A lot of it's based on what that person is expecting, what that end consumer is used to, or what they see out there as a vision for the future. So I think hopefully there will be more experiences, in retail, brick and mortar, as people are able to reopen, but also just implementing technology across the board. And to that point, I think there's a difference in technology. I mean, not everything is equal. So thinking about what something is particularly good at and not trying to make it fit a different foot. For example, VR is very good at this particular thing. AR is very good at this. You've got your screen, your Zoom calls, such as this, or versus, an alt space or something else. So using technology specifically to what those technology capabilities are good at.
I think that's a great question. William, go ahead, please.
Sorry, it's just something to add, and just something I'm thinking about is, from a personal level, the amount of kind of email communication I got from companies, brands, to the point it's overwhelming and I don't open anything. And with press and marketing budgets going down, I think there's really something about technology and marketing and really getting smarter and clever about it. As Silke mentioned, making it more personal, knowing what I will open as an email and make me interested, whether it's through Instagram or all these other platforms. I think this is where technology can really help drive engagement.
I've been sprinkling in the questions from the QA. I'm going to add one more to the end, but what I want to on this last question, which I will give you now, and then I'll give you instructions so you can think about it. William, you brought up a specific technology just now where instead of just email blasts, which I'm sure we all know, we've started, the stage one is you go to one of my folders. I don't want to unsubscribe from you just yet, but we're just going to put you in a folder. And stage two is too many, unless you're providing value, right? And value is different for everybody. And I see all those posts about emails are the most important one because we all have one, or the majority of folks have one. And if you actually get read, that is the golden circle of trust between you and a brand. So with regards to technologies, what gets you excited? What is the technology, or one of the top ones, that you think is going to enable the customer experience to justify folks to come back into brick and mortar? What is the true north for you when you speak to your clients? Hey, I'm a big developer. I'm a retail brand. I have X budget, and I need whatever I determine my KPI of success to be. I need it to work. And you are going to recommend a singular technology, or you're going to at least proselytize one. If you were to pick one, for example, mine is smart glasses. I'm very excited. I don't think they're happening this year, probably not next, but you just look at all of the leaks from Apple and version 2 of Google Glass, when instead of looking at our phones in our prayer position, potentially the virtual and augmented reality experiences we've created can be superimposed on the real world. And hopefully folks like William can make sure that experience feels natural and customized to me. And Silke can make sure she proselytizes that across all of her clients. So the question to you is, what technologies get you excited about the future? And if you don't mind, if folks that are watching the recorded version or are in our attendees room, let them know where they can follow you or learn more about, get in touch, or where they can at least learn more about what you're up to. So whoever wants to start, Silke, if you don't mind.
Yep, I will go first, and I'll go fast. So I believe that the use of headsets and virtual glasses has been around for some time. They're getting better. The question I often get asked as well: when is it finally critical mass? When do we go from developers getting really excited to the broad consumer groups? And I do not believe that it is as imminent as next year. It's all of a sudden we will tilt and it will be mass adoption. We are certainly headed in that direction. I think augmented reality and what I can do on my mobile phone and overlay information that is relevant to me at the moment is quite the key. So a lot of the cases that we help clients with is, what type of data do I want to see on my mobile device when I'm walking down the street, or that reminds me and proactively pings me that there is a sale going on at my favorite retailer, and that, you know, very importantly, at that luxury Italian brand that I'm so devoted to, that they are having a, you know, sneak preview or a VIP event that I didn't know. So mobile phones are with us at all times, for the better or worse. How do I get the mobile experience to become more organic and more seamless is where we're at. And that includes the augmented reality version. So as I maybe then walk into that store, I'm also able to scan what I want to see in terms of information. And that can go all the way back to, you know, the origin. This was truly sourced in Italy. This comes from a craftsman in Venice. As a discerning consumer, I would want to see that. So we are advising and we're banking a lot of the augmented reality version data, as well as the interaction with the merchandise itself.
Fantastic. And Silke, where can folks learn more about your practice or the IBM group that you're with, or potentially even follow your updates?
Absolutely, yeah. So IBM.com is a great resource because there are different links also into the topics I talked about: big data, virtualization, blockchain. So dig around, look, there's a lot of free information, actually great research. And then you have my name here on the screen. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm absolutely delighted to continue the dialogue, and yeah, very happy that you had me on today.
Thank you very much. William, do you want to go next?
Sure. Yes. So, I mean, I mentioned it briefly earlier. There's several companies that do this, but for us, it's called Hero. But there's other brands, other companies that have it. So you're looking online, you see the little pop-up in the corner. It's a client advisor that can help you. However, I think the difference is it's not a chatbot. It's actually someone human in a store. And for us as a business, I think that's great. There's that real personal level, and they can tell you those stories. And it's also a great way of kind of giving us access to someone that was an online shopper that didn't normally come to a physical brick and mortar store. There's an opportunity there for us to start a conversation and build a relationship outside of then that online shop. So I think there's a lot of potential there. Something super simple, but I think can bring a lot of good. Yeah, also you can find out more about Fendi on fendi.com. Please do some browsing, have a shop. And if you need any further information or want to chat further, you can also find me under my name on LinkedIn.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, Amy, you're up.
I'm going to have to say I would recommend everyone having a Cleanbox as a technology that I'm personally very excited about. And I am a big fan of virtual and augmented reality, obviously, and every other tech that we've talked about. And I think that there's a place for all of it. But I think as a consumer myself, I mean, I want to go back to the shops, even though I purchase a lot online, mostly because I travel, but it's exciting. There's something that you do get in person that you virtually. And I think that's something that people will continue to value. So if you come into a store and you know that you can bring your cell phone and just leave it at the front and have it cleaned while you're doing your shopping experience, that's as important as knowing that that same brand did that for you with either their products or anything else to mitigate that risk. It could be, you know, you've used a Cleanbox to decontaminate all the employees' masks, or you're coming in and you get to decontaminate your own. So having a Cleanbox in every store and having a visual of that, because we do provide some visual guides for that 60-second process. It makes it interesting, gives people something to look at. So I'm excited about that. You can find me, of course, on LinkedIn, Amy Hedrick. My name is spelled correctly here. Thank you very much, Chadwick. There is no N in the last name, just for clarity. And then my company is cleanboxtech.com. So please do take a look at some of the products that we offer. And I'd love to hear from you. And thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you to all of our panelists. I was the first person on my block with an Oculus Rift dev kit. I hope to be the first with a Cleanbox. So I will ping you for that. So thank you all. We have a lot of questions still remaining. I want to be mindful of all of our panelists' time. So panelists, don't be surprised if you get a lot of folks reaching out. Questions range from diving deeper into certain technologies and potential practical use cases to the efficacy and the ability in certain regions on personalized data. What is the balance of anonymizing data versus enabling folks to say, hey, you're doing a great job, please provide me my recommendations. So don't be surprised if you get a lot of inbounds. And for those of you that are watching, these webinars are hosted monthly. Feel free to follow Diamond on all of the social platforms, including LinkedIn, and be sure to sign up for getting notifications at diamond.la/webinars. So with that, thank you all of our panelists. Thank you to our ASL interpreter, shout out. And again, Diamond's all about accessibility. Let's build tech that's for everyone. And we'll see you next month.
Bye-bye.
Thank you
Thanks,
so much.
everybody.